Alright y'all, I wanted to make a quick video today. I'm down here in Buenos Aires, it's raining, and there's been some thunder, so I'm not really going to be able to do anything outside today. I thought today would be a great day where we could look at the state of things very quickly here in Argentina, Buenos Aires specifically, and we could appreciate what we have in the United States in comparison to them. So there's a lot of good things in Buenos Aires, and Argentina as a whole for that matter, in the culture, and there's some really bad ones. So typically, like, the culture is really cool here, the people are very nice generally, and lots of good things that you could expect to find in the States, you could also expect to find over here. However, the one bad thing everyone routinely talks about down here is the economy. The economy is just fucking shit here. And specifically, it's very much reflected by their currency, the Argentine peso. So when I was here last year, I remember exiting the country and I was pretty sure, I can't find it on Google right now, but I'm pretty sure it was 12.50 to 1 when I had left. And when I left, it was roughly mid-September of 2024. It says here that it was 9.59. Of course, this is giving you week-to-week breakdown, so it fluctuated a lot, I'm sure, and this looks much more stable than it probably actually was. But in my head, I had the number 12.50, even if it says 1,000. Now, when I arrived here, it was just under 1,300, so it was basically the same number that I remember as when I had left. And that was reflected in the Airbnb price that I paid. Even though it was a little bit more expensive, it's still roughly the same. However, in the 1 month I've been here, things have gone up from 12.92 roughly to 14.75 in just 4 weeks. So in the last 5 years in the States, yes, we've had a lot of serious problems with inflation. I mean, after all, we gave everyone stimulus checks during COVID and printed a shitload of money, and then people thought that, oh yeah, this isn't going to affect us in a few years. Like, no, of course, inflation always destroys things, right? But the inflation that we experience versus the inflation that they've had here, and especially in the last 20 years, has been like two totally different ball games. So let's go back 22 years to when it was 2003, and it's roughly saying that you could trade in $1 for just under 6 Argentine pesos. That trend seems to be roughly the same here, right? It's not doing anything too crazy, right? It's going... Of course, it's losing a little bit, but not much. These are all numbers that are like somewhat respectable, right? Double digits. Now, of course, when you get to 2016, at this point, it's 30-1 versus 6-1. So it's gone up about 5 times since 2003 in 13 years. For a third world country, that's not awful. But then watch what happens after 2016. You can kind of see how fucking steep this gets here. From 2016 to 2019, it goes up just under 3 times. And in about mid-2019, it's gone up from 30 to 85. So from mid-June to 84 of 2019, let's just pick an arbitrary date and see what happens in like February of 2020. So it goes up another 30 pesos to get $1, which is really not great, obviously. But things are still just in the triple digits, right? And that means in the last 5 years, it's gone from 120 pesos to $1 to 1,474. It's lost its value 12 times over, roughly, in the last 5 years. And that's compared to it losing its value, say, 20 times, right? So the compounding effect of destruction and inflation is very much evident here, and the people are the ones that suffer for it. Okay, so it goes from 120, and it hits 200 in December of 2021. And in another year, it goes up to 300. In March of 2023, which is like 6 months later, it goes up to 400. In June of 2023, it goes up to 500. In August of 2023, 2 months later, it goes up to 700. January of 2024 is when they get to 800. June of 2024, it slows down, it goes to 900. Now it's only going up every few months, right? 100 pesos. When I get here, which is not the number I remember, but it gets to about 1,000 in November of 2024, or just after I leave, I mean. In the last 5 years, the Argentinians have been inflated, but this is the point I'm trying to make. Think about the wage that you and I are making in the United States, whatever that number is, right? Let's say that you're making $25 an hour. If you work 2,000 hours, you'll make roughly $50,000, something like that. No taxes are included. I'm just trying to make the point. You and I have experienced inflation, right? The cost of things has gone up remarkably, right? Especially the cost of housing. We have a huge demand of people that shouldn't even be in the country. They need to find housing. Supply is therefore way too small in comparison to demand. And the cost of things is simply just going to go up for those who can afford it, right? I remember when I moved to Texas, I found a kind of dumpy place for like $700 and it was pretty good for what it was. But then they wanted to raise it to like 1,000 6 months later, and I was like, yeah, fucking right. So roughly that's kind of like a 33% increase, right? Maybe it's just like the Texas market, or it could be attributed to some other stuff. But roughly a lot of people are kind of seeing the same stuff, especially in the big city. The $25 that you're making and I was making is going less and less. The $25 an hour didn't change, right, in those couple years or those couple months for me in Texas. And my $25 an hour to pay for my $750 rent required about 30 hours of my time, right? However, after all the inflation and all the bullshit and the continuing rise of prices, that now required 40 hours of my time at the same $25 an hour to pay the $1,000 rent, right? Obviously, I said no to that, but the cost of things went up, right? That is tiny in comparison to what these people are dealing with. You and I have roughly kept the same kind of dollar amount while the prices of things have gone way the hell up, as in like a percentage of 100. But our wages didn't increase from 25 to like $2,500, which buys less. Let's pretend that these guys were getting paid like $3 or $4 an hour, right? If you get paid $3 or $4 an hour in 2003, that was going to be at like what? That was going to be 24 pesos roughly for an hour of work if you're making $3 or $4 an hour. However, in 2019, as we saw, it goes up to 120 to 1. So that means if you're making the same $3 or $4 an hour and they keep the wage the same, you're going to be making 360 pesos an hour, roughly. The difference is these people's currency has been destroyed and obliterated, and they have to keep changing things to go up, right? The reason I noticed this is because when I went to go pay for a little steak, their version of steak over here, which is like asado, I'd noticed compared to last year, the prices went up like roughly 50%, even though it was the same place with the same steak. So these guys are probably getting like wage increases, right? But it doesn't translate to much because the inflation is just through the roof and destroying everything, right? So we may bitch and moan about inflation in the United States, which of course is a serious problem. But over here, these people are living in a totally different universe. So while there are many good things about Argentina, and this tends to be the rule for South America, while there's many things going on that are good, maybe culturally, the economy is usually the one where they completely and totally lose it. So even though you may be making the same wage that you were a couple years ago and it's really not buying you as much, it's better than getting a pay increase of, say, maybe going from $25 to like $2,500 an hour, but then having to pay for bread that costs like $7,500. Everything down here is generally at least high 4 digits in pesos, and generally it's going to be 5 digits to really do anything. So again, this was just supposed to be a quick one, but count your blessings and be glad you were born in the US, because even though the economy feels like it's completely crap and shit right now with all the inflation and terrible policies that we're now paying the price of, things in our country are generally way better than a lot of other countries. And to see it firsthand is something else, you know? Okay, a little editor note here. I completely forgot that the Argentine peso actually has 2 rates. There's going to be like the official government rate where they kind of overvalue and say, oh no, our Argentine peso is much stronger than you think it is, right? But then there's like the actual rate, which is called the black market rate, right? Or the blue rate. On this side, it's the informal rate. You can see that I'm not smoking crack and I'm not living in La La Land. It was about 1240, at least on the informal rate. That's what most people talk about when they talk about it here. You can see that last year it was 983 according to the official rate, the government rate, right? And go figure, the government is blowing smoke up everyone's ass saying, oh no, our peso's much stronger than you think it is, right? But I mean, it is completely wacky to just look at this, right? It looks like it's like semi-stable, right? On the black market right here. I mean, it's only 4 to 1 in 2010. And I mean, 20 to 1 is not great, but 2018 is really where the can of worms and Pandora's box starts being opened. So, you know, be glad you were born in the States.